Good morning, Year 9, and welcome to today's lesson. Before you begin, please make sure that you've downloaded the following supplementary files. These are the Galaxy Checklist, the Galaxy Codes, and the Galaxy Overview. The checklist is very important, and you should go back to this at the end of every lesson and make sure that when we've covered particular areas, you tick off what we've covered. At the end of our study of the Galaxy advert, and indeed at the end of our study of all of our close study products, you'll need to make sure that your checklists are complete. If there's anything you've missed, then you will need to review. Hello, Year 9, and welcome to today's lesson. This is lesson 2 on the Galaxy advert. And this lesson is focused on narrative, intertextuality, and how the advert demonstrates advertising conventions. To start with a knowledge retrieval task, I'd like you to think about how the Galaxy advert demonstrates the following conventions of adverts. You've got a table to download, the KR task. I've done a couple of these for you. I've done stereotypes and I've done slogan. What you need to do is you need to note down how the advert features a famous person, how the advert features attractive people, how the advert uses hard sell, if it does. If you don't think it does, write down that you don't think it does. How the advert uses soft sell. It might well be that you think the advert uses a combination of the two. Hint, I think it does. When the advert shows the product and how the advert demonstrates the product. This should take you about 5 minutes. If you can fill this in on the sheet, that's fine. Otherwise, use the cues on the sheet to write your answers down. And when you're ready, move on to the next slide. Obviously, it uses Audrey Hepburn. She is a famous person. She's featured throughout the advert. Attractive people, the chauffeur and Audrey are both conventionally attractive, and they are most directly associated with the chocolate bar. The hard sell, it suggests that you should buy Galaxy because it is the best. It does that by saying, why have cotton when you can have silk? It's clearly a metaphor that the Galaxy is silk, which is a high quality fabric. Other chocolate bars are clearly cotton. They are less high quality. The soft sell, it doesn't explicitly say that Galaxy will lead you to happiness or take you back to a better past, but it does imply it quite heavily. The slogan, why have cotton when you can have silk? The product, there are close-ups of the bar of Galaxy and indeed the close-ups of the chocolate itself, and it demonstrates the chocolate product when there's a big close-up of Audrey actually eating a chunk. Tick the ones you got right, fill in the ones that you didn't get, and then when you're ready, move on. We need to think a bit about the narrative structure of the Galaxy advert. So I'd like you obviously to watch the advert again. I know you're probably getting a bit sick of it, but it does help. Let's think of the narrative structure of the advert. Remember, we have talked about several different narrative theories: Props theory, Todorov's theory, Levi-Strauss's theory. We need to think about how we apply them. So remember, Levi-Strauss is binary opposites. Todorov is structure, and prop is the characters and the quest. Now remember, we apply these theories, we use these theories to help us understand, in this case, how the advert works in terms of selling us chocolate. It's not a case that the advertiser sat there and said, "Ooh, how am I going to use props characters?" It's a case that props characters appear in the advert whether we like them to or not, because it's a universal theory of structure. We also need to think about how useful they are in explaining how the advert works. Now, a bit of a clue here, they are actually very useful because they do explain, in fact, in terms of most adverts, why most adverts are the way they are. And the reason is that we are looking out subconsciously for these theories. We don't realize we're doing it. We're conditioned to do it because it's how stories have always been told to us. We're looking for the equilibrium being disrupted because we want to know how it's going to be solved. We're looking for the heroes, we're looking for the villains because that's how stories are always told. We're looking for the binary opposites because instinctively we understand that's how stories work, that there is always two sides, there are always two sides. How those work tells us a little bit about how the chocolate is being sold, because the chocolate is always going to be on the right side. It's always going to be on the hero's side. It's always going to be part of the solution. What I'd like you to have a go at doing, and we're going to be doing this over the course of today's lesson, is we're going to be filling in the narrative table. I'd like you to make sure that you've got access to that table. If you can print it out, brilliant. If you can fill it in online, even better. Otherwise, I mean, I don't want you to draw the thing out, but you will need to use it to help you to structure your notes. You'll recall that Levi Strauss was the guy who came up with the idea of binary opposites. And binary opposites are oppositional forces which drive a narrative. They are effectively the two sides to the story. Usually, one side we perceive as good and we see them as the protagonists, the other side we see as bad, and we see that as the antagonist. The advert contains a number of binary opposites. I'll give you an example here, and this is Audrey on the crowded bus not moving, Audrey in the flash car moving, and obviously the good side of the binary is when Audrey is moving, when she's stuck on the bus, it's crowded, she's obviously not very happy, and crucially she can't eat her chocolate. When she's in the car, she's moving, she looks happy, she's able to eat her chocolate. And that persuades us by making the chocolate, giving the chocolate an association of speed, of wealth, of happiness. Another binary opposite is found in the slogan, why have cotton when you can have silk? How does that persuade? Well, that persuades us by linking the galaxy with silk. And silk obviously is a very prestigious fabric. It's a fabric that feels nice. It's very expensive compared to cotton, which is rougher, which is more common. We are on the side of the silk. The silk, we can have it, and it's the galaxy. I'd like you to try and come up with two other binary opposites that you can see in that advert and think about how they persuade us to buy the chocolate. When you've done that, move on to the next slide. Another of the narrative theories we looked at was Todorov's narrative theory. Now you'll recall that Todorov was the guy that studied how stories are structured and how a story is told. And there are 5 parts to Todorov's theory. It starts off in a state of equilibrium, where things are okay, something happens to disrupt the equilibrium. That is basically where the story kicks off. The characters recognize that the disruption has occurred. They attempt to repair that disruption, and that leads to a new equilibrium or a return to the original state. And that's Todorov's narrative theory. And again, remember, we can apply this to any story, but we don't necessarily see all of these moments, even though we know they must have happened. For example, in the story of the Galaxy advert, we never actually see the original state of equilibrium, because that's happened before the start of the advert. It's the bus travelling through Italy. What we see is the aftermath of the disruption. The bus has hit a fruit stall and it has stopped, and that's where we join the advert. We need to think about the moment of recognition. We need to think about how the disruption is repaired, at least for Audrey's character, and what the state of new equilibrium is. And those moments should be fairly obvious when you look at the advert. What is Audrey's moment of recognition? What is the attempt to repair? What is the state of new equilibrium? I'd like you to complete the Todorov section of your narrative table. And finally, prop. You recall that prop is the guy that came up with the idea that there were 8 basic character functions, and he also identified that pretty much every story follows a quest narrative. Using Shrek as an example, we've got some quite interesting character types. We've got Shrek, who is a hero, and he has a quest or a mission. We've got a villain, and also effectively a false hero as well. Farquaad, the obvious villain, he tries to stop the hero. Got the princess, Princess Fiona, who is the prize. We've got the donor who helps Shrek, for in the case of the Muffin Man. The dispatcher, an authority figure who sends the hero off on the quest, although actually in Shrek I'd say that Farquaad is probably the dispatcher. A helper, in this case the donkey, and a false hero who tries to take credit for Shrek's actions. And the quest prop suggests that stories are all based around a quest. Now, I'd like you to try and apply prop's theory to the Galaxy advert, and bear in mind there might be 1 or 2 possible answers that you can give for some of these. Another key term that you need to know, and I'd like you to put this as a subheading, is intertextuality. Intertextuality is basically where a media product refers to other media products. In this case, the Galaxy advert is intertextual with Audrey Hepburn's movies, and it does that to engage the audience, an audience that might recognize those references either directly or indirectly. This advert is clearly intertextual. It's intertextual because you have Audrey Hepburn looking glamorous, and glamour was very much part of the Audrey Hepburn brand, and that links to the way she looks, particularly in Breakfast at Tiffany's. We've got the guy playing the role of the driver, and that role is a direct link to a character played by an actor called Gregory Peck in the film Roman Holiday, and the actor looks a little bit like Gregory Peck. He also looks a little bit like an actor called Tony Curtis, Tony Curtis, who was very successful in the 50s and 60s. Well, I don't know if Curtis ever appeared in an Audrey Hepburn film. The use of the classic car is also a kind of intertextual thing with 1950s movies. That kind of convertible in particular is very much the kind of car that characters would drive in the 1950s. And other things that are intertextual are the use of the song Moon River, which was the theme song to Breakfast at Tiffany's and sung by Audrey Hepburn. And the narrative structure of the advert, the story is setting-wise obviously linked to Roman Holiday. So why might adverts use intertextuality? Well, they do that because they remind audiences of other products that they might have enjoyed, or the other products that have a cultural significance, and the advertiser is trying to link their product with the product that has cultural significance. In this case, films like Roman Holiday, Breakfast at Tiffany's, Audrey Hepburn herself, all of whom have tremendous cultural capital. They're very important. People still like them. People still watch them. What the advertisers are trying to get you to think about is that Galaxy as a chocolate is as important and as significant as these things because they have a direct link. Even if you've never seen Breakfast at Tiffany's, if you've never seen Roman Holiday, you will have an awareness of that kind of film, that kind of star. You might not know who Audrey Hepburn is, but you will have a knowledge of the kind of star that she was, because that kind of character will have appeared in other media that you've seen. Similarly, Even if you've never seen a 1950s romantic comedy, there's a very, very good chance that you'll have seen something which relates to a 1950s romantic comedy, either in terms of style or form, and you will get the reference, you will recognize it, even if you don't know the specifics. You don't need to have an in-depth knowledge of Audrey Hepburn, Breakfast at Tiffany's, Roman Holiday to actually understand or enjoy the advert. You just need to, but you know, an awareness of them helps you decode it a little bit. Examples from the advert, obviously we've talked about a few of those, so do please make sure you've noted those down. I haven't put Moon River on the slide because I want you to make that note based on my commentary rather than what's copied down on the slide. So if you don't mention Moon River, I'll know that you're just copying slavishly from the slide and you're not listening to my commentary. Although this doesn't appear in this advert, intertextuality can include images, snatches of dialogue, songs, or other actors. Please make sure that you've got your notes down about intertextuality and then move on to the next slide. How did they do it? Well, there you go. There's a picture with a couple of the models who were used, and you'll see they've got little dots on their faces, and those are there for the guys doing the CGI to map Audrey Hepburn's face onto the faces of the models who obviously have a passing similarity to Audrey Hepburn. They use what's called 3D facial tracking technology, and what you do there is you basically tell the computer to look out for the little dots, and the little dots then help the computer map the graphical representation. I don't even pretend to know how it works, but that is basically what they did. They used two different models. I'm not quite sure why, but maybe it was to do with particular angles that they had to capture. And they used this 3D imaging software to recreate Audrey Hepburn. They also obviously used actual video of Audrey Hepburn. So I think some of the shots are Audrey herself, some of the shots are the models. I imagine that the shot on the bus is possibly a genuine shot of Audrey. The shot of the model moving from the bus to the car obviously isn't going to be Audrey, but I don't know for definite. Now, CGI, I've mentioned CGI, but you need to know what that stands for and how it was used to resurrect Audrey. So CGI stands for computer generated imagery. Obviously, Audrey Hepburn was famous in the 1950s. She's ranked as the third greatest female screen legend. I can't offhand tell you who the other two were. So it was used for this advert, and here's a quote from the company that made the advert. Audrey represents heritage, classiness, and elegance. From a strategic and creative point of view, it made sense for Galaxy to communicate its silk, not cotton branding through these qualities. What was less clear, however, was just how we were meant to recreate an iconic and globally recognized face when the original footage exists at a resolution incompatible with today's high standards. That basically means that they didn't have high enough quality footage of Audrey Hepburn because basically modern TVs, modern films look a lot better. The resolution is higher. There is more detail. They used Audrey Hepburn because they regarded her as a physical representation of Galaxy. So CGI stands for computer generated imagery, and they used computers to recreate Audrey. Now, this is where we get into a slightly moral grey area, because obviously Audrey Hepburn is dead and she couldn't give permission to use her imagery. Now, Audrey Hepburn never advertised stuff when she was alive, I don't think. It was her son's estate. And you'll notice when you watch the advert that one of the copyright credits is to her son. And it's a debate, really. Would Audrey actually have given permission? Is it ethical and is it right to use a dead celebrity, particularly in what might be regarded as quite a vulgar context, to sell a chocolate bar? Would Audrey Hepburn have actually consented to do this? Is chocolate the kind of thing that Audrey Hepburn would like to be associated with? Now, I don't know the answer to those questions. It's simply a case of understanding that there is a debate there to be had, that there is a discussion about that, and it is only going to increase. We are now reaching a point, and bear in mind, we're nearly 10 years after this advert, where what are called deep fakes, which are almost photorealistic recreations of actual people, are being used to spread disinformation and misinformation. And so we do need to be aware that there is a moral and an ethical issue with regard to the use of computers in recreating anyone, but perhaps recreating the dead. Now, I think this is one of those things that if we were in a lesson, we'd then spend about 10 minutes discussing it. I'm afraid, obviously, we can't do that. It's just something I'd like you to think about. Now, you might not think it's an issue at all, or you might feel quite strongly about it. It's just, all I'd like you to do is note down that there is that moral discussion. But obviously, at the end of the day, Galaxy did it, and they were very successful with the advert, and I guess they sold a lot of chocolate bars. I'd like you to think about how the Galaxy advert meets the conventions of advertising. Now, we've already looked at this partly as the KR task. I want you to do it in a bit more detail now. So make sure you've got the advertising conventions sheet, and I'd like you to fill in as many examples as you can. And it's quite interesting when you think about it, that this colour scheme of the advert all the way through reflects the colours of the Galaxy bar. You can see that in these screen grabs. And effectively, a lot of the positive things in the advert are presented using the same colour scheme as the Galaxy. So, for example, the car has the brown leather and the cream kind of hood. And they are both echoed in the Galaxy chocolate in the same way that Audrey's dress is the cream with the brown spots, and she has that brown neckerchief thing. So she is also effectively a living representation of the chocolate bar. And so all the positive things in the advert, all the things we're meant to kind of aspire to be like or to like, they are effectively reflecting the chocolate bar. It could also be argued that in the advert, the chocolate bar itself is not the hero in the same way it is in that Coca-Cola advert or Pepsi Cola as well. Um, it's a bizarre advert, actually, when you think about it. But it is the reward, it is the prize that Audrey gets. That's something that she savours when she achieves a degree of luxury in her life. So it suggests that the Galaxy is effectively something that you reward yourself with, but only when you really feel that you can savor it. It's not something that you just eat like whenever. So all the way through that advert, the chocolate is effectively a reward. It's a goal, and that is a slightly different representation to what we see in the NHS advert. What I'd like you to do now is I'd like to think about how the Galaxy advert compares to other chocolate bar adverts. And I've got a series of links here. Again, you'll need to access these through the Teams site or through the PowerPoint presentation or the PDF. I'd like to watch those adverts. I'd like you to answer a short essay question. This should be about a paragraph. And that's, how did these adverts that are from the past and the Galaxy advert, how do they demonstrate changing social values and beliefs? How are those adverts from the past different to modern adverts? Be looking for the kind of representations of characters, the stories that they're telling, the kind of messages that they're giving. I'd like you to spend about 10 or 15 minutes answering that question. You can also, if you want to, find your own examples of adverts from chocolate, although you don't have to, but please do watch some of those on the list of links. How do these adverts demonstrate changing social values and beliefs? When you've completed your essay, please photograph all of your work. Please make sure that you've attached it. Please make sure you upload your work. Please click that you've turned it in, and then that is it.